Welcome to the Rose City, Rip City, Stumptown, and Bridgetown. Welcome to another episode of My Real Portland, the podcast. I'm My Real Portland host, Joseph Lyons. I am so grateful you've tuned in and you're about to meet three amazing Portland originals, a comedian, a beekeeper, and a food author. Each My Real Portland episode features amazing artists and performers from all around the city. I'll ask them each the Fast Five, and then I'll throw in a game show on top of it all for a fun night out with friends, German food, and ale. Tonight's show was recorded live at Portland's Jade Lounge next to the Slide Inn at 23rd and Ankeny on June 11th, 2018. Our next show is Tuesday, July 10th at 7 p.m. Happy hour is at 6:30. Speaking of Portland originals, the show is produced by myself, Joseph Lyons, Portland Realtor, helping home buyers and sellers make their real dreams become real estate. Putting this show together is my real dream, and I support this fun hobby with my professional day job in real estate. And my career is all word of mouth, so please tell others you know of My Real Portland, the Realtor, Joseph Lyons. That's josephlyons.com. And now, on with the show.
It's always been home, I've always been here, I've always got time for one more beer. So pick up a beer and pull up a chair and strike up the band. It's My Real Portland.
Hello, and welcome to My Real Portland. Applause comes here. Coming to you from the verdant Jade Lounge at 23rd and Southeast Ankeny in my hometown, Portland, Oregon. This is My Real Portland, highlighting real people and real stories from all around the area. I'm your host, Joseph Lyons, and I've got a great show lined up for you this evening, including a Portland actress, improv performer and teacher, realtor, and urban farmer here to talk about beekeeping in Portland. It's Adrienne Flagg. And the author of Portland, a food biography, Chili's, a global history, and Breakfast, a history, and she's a frequent panelist on the OPB podcast, The Four Top. It's Heather Arndt Anderson. And voted funniest person at Helium Comedy Club, favorite comedian in the 2017 Willamette Week Readers Poll, and has been seen in festivals from Bridgetown to Bumbershoot. It's Caitlin Weierhauser. So it's that time of the year when we take an entire month to celebrate personal freedom. That's right, this month we take to the streets and take a close look at our value and worth and open closet doors wide open. That's right, it's National Home Ownership Month. That was a joke. Okay, so it is Pride Month. One of my guests on the first My Real Portland, Nico Bella, recently asked online, since when did Pride go from being a day to this entire month? I mean, I remember when I was a kid, it was just this one little day. You'd have a parade in the day and you'd go out to a bar at night. And now it's this whole month-long celebration. And it's going to get to a point where in another 50 years, Ron Tonkin is going to have like ads for, Pride celebration for the car sales, or Fred Meyer's going to do like a whole month long of just selling rainbow cakes. So speaking of cakes, just what the hell? How many backwater deplorable numbnuts not only think about, but develop and implement a business plan to bake cakes, arguably the gayest of all the foods, and specifically not bake them for gay couples? So far there's been at least two that we can think of. Two, I don't have a joke here. It's just, I don't understand it. So it's Rose Festival time, which means that it's been cold and wet here until today when the parades are all over. But that also means that my favorite day of the year is coming up, the summer solstice. I've been waiting for it for 6 months. And so as soon as the solstice turns around, then I get 6 months of waiting for my next favorite holiday, winter solstice, so that I can think about how long the days are going to get and the whole process starts all over again. Okay, that's enough of me. My first guest has been part of Portland's Bridgetown Comedy Festival, won Portland Helium Comedy Club's Funniest Person competition and was voted favorite comedian of the Willamette Week Readers Poll in 2017. Caitlin came up in top 3 at the Big Sky Comedy Fest and has performed for Bridgetown Comedy Festival 2015 to 17, Bumbershoot, Pickathon, the All Jane Comedy Fest, and tonight she's got even one more show after this. Please welcome to My Real Portland, comedian Caitlin Weierhauser.
Thank you. This is so nice and intimate. I like this. Like just demanding all the attention at like a very small dinner party. Up here. I will admit, I'm not from Portland. It looks like I'm from Portland. Yeah. Like if Portland made an export. They would just make me's, wouldn't they? Yeah. I did grow up out in Southern Oregon, which was terrible. Oh, yeah, real bad, stupid, real weird. As a kid, it was fun because we grew up out in the woods, out in the middle of nowhere. Grew up hunting, not for real animals. So my brother thought it would mess us up. So he would take us Ewok hunting. Yeah, rubber band crossbows, armed to the teeth, hunting Ewoks to eat. They have a language and a culture. It was murder what we were on. We were on murder hunt. He was like, well, the deers are going to screw you up. Let's go eat up people. It was very stupid. I've been trying to do the most, be the most, especially in Pride Month, ever since we elected a Chicken McNugget, the goddamn president. What a time to be alive. So I've been trying to, absolutely be the most. I've been doing a fun thing where I update my gender every season. Anyone? Thank you. I think I'm getting better at it. I just think the first one that I got was like a first draft, and you just keep making edits. You get better at it. I've been identifying as a PE teacher. Right? Nailing it. You see it. Do you hear it, though? Right? Johnson, hustle. It's right. I can't stop. That's who I am. I think I got it pretty good on the head. I will say I am a very proud butch American, clearly. Thank you. But there's definitely like perks that go along with that. Like there's like butch privilege, like I don't get catcalled, and that's amazing. You kidding? I get so much done during the day. You sneak on through. They don't see me coming. I get yelled at, you have to understand. I just get yelled at very different things. I get this about 3 times a day. Sir, ma'am, nope, lady, daddy, Mr. I don't know. Coach? What's up? Absolutely, nailed it. I like to think that if Portland did make an export, it would just be loudmouth queers with a lot of opinions. I think that's what we make here. I like to think of other products that we could expand into in the markets. Like I like to think of gender fluid as a product. Right? Where are we at on that, Portland? Where's the R&D team on that? Is it a juice or is it for your car? I don't know. But either way, feeling binary, come and get topped off is gender fluid. It's a very stupid joke. I know, I hear it too. I know. Speaking of loudmouth queers with a lot of opinions, here's one. I think neti pots are the goddamn work of the devil. Or a witch's tool. Do you have witch friends? Do you have gay friends? Yeah. They're bullies. They're very bossy. Have you been tricked into a fucking neti pot? It's a trick and a trap, I think. I think it's the funniest little prank that you can pull on somebody. If you don't know, it's the tiniest little teapot that you ever did see, and it goes in your nose and is full of saline or witchcraft. I'm not sure. Maybe both. But I was told you're supposed to bend all the way over and then pour it into one side of your face, and then by sheer magic, it's supposed to find its way out the other side. But I lost the faith halfway through. Because nothing's ever done that before. Nothing's ever gone in one side of my face and come out the other. So I sat up and nearly drowned myself to death. You would just waterboard your goddamn self. Yeah. What a way to go, to try to pass your goddamn self away in the bathroom 11 in the morning. It's embarrassing. Don't trust it. Another big campaign of mine is it's gun control. Let's get into it. What better time, right? I just think every argument against gun control is fucking idiotic. It's just stupid. And I think if you want to keep your guns, you got to come up with better fucking arguments. They're the same ones, just rinse and repeat all the time. It's like, well, I only use my gun for sport. Well, I only used lawn darts for sport, and we banned those. Do you remember lawn darts? What a wild time in this country. We just had javelins for the backyard. Yeah, you just line your sister up on the opposite end of the yard. The little one, yeah. She's harder to hit. And if you just rifle it at her as hard as you could, and if she didn't catch it in her body, you win. And the government stepped in and was like, knock it off. And we're like, good, thank you for saving us. These kids are getting holy. We got to stop that. So we banned them, and that was a good choice. Other argument against gun control is like, well, I only use my gun responsibly. Well, I only use Four Loko responsibly. And the government stepped in and was like, that's enough of that. Do you remember original formula Four Loko? Did you have that? Good choices. It was a hilarious product. It was basically meth and malt liquor as a kit. Yep, that's too many things. You shouldn't have that together. No. It was a wild summer. It was a really weird summer. Getting messed up on Four Loko. We didn't even celebrate 4th of July that year. We had fist fights and celebrated 4th of July. Yeah, good thing they banned it. These are good choices. Save us from ourselves. My favorite argument, because I think it's the most idiotic in the world, is, well, I need my gun in case the government. In case the government, what? Dale, in case. For what? You think you're gonna defend yourself against drones and shit? With your buck hunter rifle? You're gonna take them down? You're doomed. You're nincompoop. Get out of here. You're dead if they want you to be. And I like you using Facebook as the platform to do all this complaining about it. Screw you. Also, you shouldn't fear the government. Here's what I realized. I grew up in such a small town in Southern Oregon. You should fear me. Because I realized that if you only grow up with like 20 other kids and their families, you can steal the identity of every idiot you grew up with. There's a big flaw in the security system. All these websites only use like 6 security questions. And if you only grew up with a couple kids, you know the answers. You know all the answers to everybody else's business. I can hack a person. All the questions are like, what are the names of your auntie or your uncle or your cousin? I know every single one of them. We went to Vacation Bible School together. There's not a kid I don't know. What's the name of your 3rd grade teacher? Oh, you think you got me? No, it's Mrs. Smart. We all had her. We literally all had her. There was one 3rd grade teacher. That was it. Unless your weird ass was homeschooled. But in which case, I still know your mom's name. I can get in there. Favorite is like, what is the name of the street that you grew up on? Oh, it was the highway. It was the highway for everybody. There was no streets. I'm gonna hack a person. I'm gonna log in and get them. Donate all their goddamn money to Planned Parenthood. Vote wrong again and see what happens, Dale. Thank you so much. That's been my time. I appreciate you a lot.
Thank you. All right, give it up for Caitlin Weierhauser. All right. So, everyone lived on a highway. Was it Lapine?
No, Douglas County, Scottsburg, Oregon.
Scottsburg.
Went to elementary in Elkton.
I can't even imagine.
Umpqua.
Yikes.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah. Going to school in Ashland, when you said Southern Oregon, my image of Southern Oregon is a pretty white little bastion of liberalism.
Oh, different.
In the middle of,
different.
Yeah, very different. Mm-hmm.
White was right, but not. Don't say that sentence ever, actually. I just heard it out loud.
The good thing about having a podcast is I can cut that sentence
Edit
right
and
out. What sentence? I didn't hear it. Oh, my Lord. Okay, so you just opened for two really big name folks, Jeff Ross and David Tell at the Revolution Hall, just right down the street. How was that experience? Their audience is so unique, but in
They
Portland,
were so fun.
Yeah?
It was totally a party. We had the greatest time. I called my stepmom in between the shows. We had a 7 o'clock, I think, and a 10 o'clock, and she reminded me that she used to teach at, I think it was Monroe. Wasn't Rev Hall used to be Monroe School? Yeah. She used to teach there. I thought that was kind of cool. I forgot.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah. She was special ed and Spanish teacher for a long time. But yeah, the audience was incredible.
Spanish teacher at Monroe. We have a Spanish teacher from Cleveland High School here with us tonight.
All of my admiration.
Oh,
but they were great. They were so much fun. The audience was really, really great. The late show was a little drunky poo, but still pretty well behaved. They were actually really fantastic, and they knew, like, the people that know Jeff Ross and David Tell know that they're incredibly engaging with crowd work during their normal show, and so they were incredibly gracious to my friend Amanda Arnold and I that opened the show when we were just doing material. You know what I mean? It's not art, like we weren't like crowd working. So they were terrific. They were so much fun, and what a cool venue!
Right?
It's so amazing. Yeah, I really love that theater.
Well, and especially after doing Helium Comedy Club, which can have a good sized audience.
Yeah.
To go to the Revolution where it's just
big timing.
Yeah. Oh
big
my
timing. Yeah, the biggest one I think is Rev Hall, and then Aladdin Theater. And when that place is sold out, it's like heart skipping beats, and that might be a medical thing. But it's very exciting. Like there's that many people in a cool theater.
So speaking of doing shows, yesterday you did a show for a volunteer in the comedian industry here in Portland, Amanda Pants, who recently went through an open heart surgery.
Yeah, this maniac.
And so a room filled of comedians getting together to hold a benefit for a fellow friend in the industry. How was that show? It
was so warm. It was so fun. It felt like family. So many people I haven't seen in a long time came out, and the whole vibe was just like so sweet and embracing, and it reminded, like it was a lot of, hey, remember when? And I would go, oh, barely, oh God. I'd known Amanda Pants before I even started comedy, because she knew a really close friend of my family, and so we got to know each other getting shit-faced, doing karaoke at Chopsticks 3 on Burnside. Rest in peace. The old good one, the old bad one. How it can be. Love that place. But yeah, we were bringing up old memories, and it was really fun. It was really, really nice.
That's really great.
Yeah.
So speaking of, you had mentioned that it was a really lovely time. A comedian recently tweeted, I think it was Danny Feltz, but I can't remember, who's now in New York, but somebody had said that Portland comics really mostly love and support each other. And do you think that's true here in Portland?
We do.
How do you think that affects the comedy scene in Portland?
We try to be real good to each other, and we hold ourselves, I think, to a high standard compared especially to other scenes. On the other hand, we could definitely be doing a better job all the time. But compared to some other scenes, like we have a reputation at festivals, like when we go out of town, as being fucking dorks. Because we're incredibly supportive and kind of like obsessed or in love with each other. So we'll go, halfway across the country to do a festival and go and sit on each other's show and watch them. And people are like, don't you see these guys like all the time? We're like, yes, I want to see them here now. They were very supportive. We're all obsessed with each other's comedy. Like we know each other's bits so well. It's a really good group, and we hang out. It's a big, like bad choices party culture.
That is just fantastic.
It is fun. It's pretty fun.
The last couple of shows where we've had comedians on, it's just everyone has just been so warm and just so willing to be present and just like you. So thank you.
Thank you.
And so let's do some plugs. where are people going to see you next, and how can people follow you?
Let's Stand Up is the monthly gay lady show. Cleverly named, I will
Gay
say.
lady show.
My compliments to Kirsten Kupenbender. And that's June 14th. That's like this week. And then every month I also have the Mercury presents the I Anonymous live show, where we take the Mercury's I Anonymous, have you seen it? And we just judge them. We just try to figure out what is wrong with us. Portland! So we take all those rants and confessions, and I have a panel of friends, comedians, radio people, whoever, and come up and we just riff around on that. That's a lot of fun. And yeah, I'm out. God, I'm everywhere. I don't know. Who knows what's coming up? I only have like a 2-day buffer.
So how can people follow your schedule?
Oh, at Uncle Kate and UncleKate.com.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank
Fantastic.
you so much. I appreciate you.
All right, now.
Thanks.
Don't go
You
anywhere. You are staying right there because sound means it's time for the Fast Five.
Woo!
So, Caitlin, here are tonight's Fast Five questions. What's your favorite Portland neighborhood?
Mine. Sunnyside.
Sunnyside. Oh my gosh.
Sunnyside
what a unique answer.
representing.
I love that.
I like
Right
Sunnyside.
next to Buckman. And are we in Sunnyside? So you are going on a day trip. Where are you likely headed? The coast, the gorge, the valley, or Seattle?
What show pays the most? A
Probably-
day trip of my own fruition literally doesn't exist.
Yeah.
I go for comedy.
You go for comedy.
Yeah.
So probably Seattle, or maybe
Probably
Valley.
Seattle. Probably Seattle.
Have you ever done a show in Astoria? We were just talking
Yeah.
about shows in Astoria.
Yeah, I've done a
Great
couple in
location.
Astoria. It's great. I'm going to be in Cannon Beach this weekend.
Oh, fantastic. Cannon Beach.
I know, I'm very excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
I know, like little liberal mecca.
How were you in the festival that was just at the coast?
Yeah, the other festival. This is another one. It was so fun, and oh my God, it was so great. Amanda Arnold put on just an incredible first year fest, and it's like, oh my God, what a huge undertaking. But it was fantastic. It was really, really well booked, and it was just like full of friends. Weekend at the coast. We booked the most incredible hotel, and a lot of us had like these little bachelor pad like cabins. It was fantastic. It was the best thing. Yeah, very
That's
fun.
awesome. Okay, so third question. What's your favorite part of Portland's Rose Festival?
The gay parades. Wait.
The pride part of Rose Festival,
Yeah.
right?
What am
Right,
I?
I'm
I
with
don't
that.
think some things are for me.
You know, I used to be all excited about the parade every year, and then I stopped doing that, and I haven't gotten excited about parade. Like, I don't think that phase
The
of my
joy
life is
has
ever
left
coming
your
back,
heart.
right? Exactly. And it's not like I don't love a parade, but
I like the dogs.
so what's your favorite obscure Portland museum?
We have those. We have those.
We have obscure museums. Like, there's a kayak museum over on 45th and Lincoln, of all things.
No shade, no hate, but that sounds horrifically
I-
boring. What?
I know, right? So, I actually don't really have an answer to that myself,
I don't
but some
either.
people might. So, how are you planning to celebrate summer solstice next week?
Oh, an annual lesbian witch tradition. I'm kidding. I don't know. I don't know when it is.
I was
don't
with
know what
you.
I'm supposed to do at any point.
Could've sold me
I
on
am
that. I
in
would've
trouble
bought
all
tickets.
the time with my queer community. I've lost crystals before. I keep saying the wrong thing about astrology, mostly that I think is fake. I don't. I'll probably get invited to something and then, I don't know, messing up. I don't know. Have a barbecue and bring the wrong thing, like meat. I'm doing my best out here.
Oh my
Doing my
gosh, that's
best.
hysterical. All right, thank you.
Thank you so
Again,
much.
Caitlin Weierhauser, everybody. All right. So my next guest is a Portland author of 4 food-centric books, wrote the Pacific Northwest chapter in the 4-volume Food Cultures of the World Encyclopedia, appears on the OPB podcast, The Four Top, and recently wrote about Portland Monthly about an obscure love colony in 1859 Honduras from a founder of Milwaukee. Please welcome to the stage Heather Arndt Anderson. Heather,
Hi.
thank you so much for being on the podcast on My Real Portland. So, a little story. I found out about Heather because I was hanging out at a library with a librarian, one of my favorite types of people. And I was at the Milwaukee Library. I had recently done a video on the Llewellyn family and was doing some follow-up research with the librarian there. And asked her if she knew anything about the founder of the library, and she brought out this article from the Portland Monthly that had just been published about a very thing that I had just written about or talked about, this Honduras love.
The Tiger Island sex cult, as I like to call
Tiger
it.
Island sex cult. That's right. So, how did you come about this story? I mean, we come across these things in our lives in just odd ways.
Google is a hell of a drug. I was doing research for my Portland food biography book, which is a culinary history of the city of Portland. And Henderson Llewellyn comes up in that story because he brought the first fruit trees to the area of Oregon, which became Portland and Milwaukee. And so yeah, I'd been doing a lot of research, and then I was working on a presentation a little bit later, and I just kind of stumbled upon this crazy story that happened in California, because he had moved here from Iowa. He was a Quaker, and he moved out here. He came on the same wagon train as Lot Whitcomb, who brought the first steamships to the state of Oregon. And he settled in what is now Selwood neighborhood of Portland, just on the border of Milwaukee. But he only stayed for a couple years, and he sold it off to his brother Seth, who went on to invent the Bing cherry, which was named after his Manchurian foreman Ah Bing. And he developed a lot of the agriculture and orchard trees that went on to form Hood River. So Henderson took off. He went to a town that he called Fruitvale in California, just outside of Oakland, which is now I think a pretty gang-ridden area.
So when I found out that he had done that, I went to the intersection that has his name on it, Llewellyn, that intersects with Meek, an old friend that he lived with here.
Yeah, the Meeks.
And there's the Meek mansion and this beautiful
Meeks cut off
property. Yeah, and then the intersection is the middle of a town that I didn't feel safe being. I mean, in the middle of the day, it was alarming.
So but back in the 1840s, it was decidedly less stabby. It was a safe place to set up shop if you were a fruit grower. So yeah, he set up shop down there. He started at some orchards, and then he was remarried at this point because his wife that he came out to Oregon with died. He had his kid with him, and he started hanging out because he's a Quaker, so he was kind of already into these loosey-goosey kind of hippy-dippy ideas. He was an abolitionist. He was a free thinker, and he started taking up with these sort of liberal occult types down in San Francisco. Big surprise. And so he took up with these free lovers, is the name of the Harmonial Brotherhood of the Free Lovers. And he got this wild hair up his ass to sell. He sold all of his property to the governor of California, bought a ship, a little schooner called the Santiago, ditched his wife, and with 12 other people just fled to Honduras to start their own free love colony. And they had a hell of a time, though. It was not a good situation. They were all vegetarian. They were all this water cure people, and they were not equipped at all to deal with tropical diseases. They were dropping left and right from cholera. There was all this fighting happening. They were having a really shitty time.
And there was reports that they were even throwing eggs at each other at one point. Yeah?
The egg situation this is all in the Santa Clara or Santa Rosa. It was all in the newspapers back then in California. They stopped in what was Tijuana. They stopped the ship somewhere in Mexico on the way down, and they wanted to get some protein because they were all basically living off sawdust and carrot peels or whatever vegetarian Quakers did back then. And so they found this guy who was selling eggs. Henderson Llewellyn bought all of the eggs, and then he went back to the ship. And then the other guy, who went by Dr. I can't remember his last name now, he also bought all of the eggs. And because the guy selling the eggs was just super happy to double his money selling the same 3 dozen eggs to 2 different people. So this became a very pointed, it was just a point of contention. Henderson Llewellyn thought that he was the owner of these eggs. He wanted to eat them, and then the other guy also thought he was the owner of the eggs, and it just started this giant shitstorm, conflict. I don't think they were actually throwing the eggs, because they were expensive eggs at that point, but it was, it caused a lot of friction, and there was a lot of infighting, and even the ladies in the party were getting pissed off at each other and like throwing shade and like calling each other, like, "Oh, you're no lady." Like that was a very like deep burn back then, I guess. Like, it's very savage behavior toward each other.
So speaking of food history then, and these people not making it back in the 1850s, what was your start into food? What was your spark? What got you started?
Oh, well, I've been cooking since I was a child, and I was very keen. I didn't have the romantic, I grew up learning to bake pies at my grandmother's apron strings. I didn't have anything like that. I had a very checked out alcoholic dad who was usually asleep on the couch, and my mom, who was really ambitious, but not, she was an average person, but she was very ambitious and hardworking, and so she would go to school during the day and work all night. And it wasn't that I had to take care of my family. It wasn't even something cool and tragic like that. I just had to I was hungry sometimes and bored, and so I would open up her cookbooks, and I wasn't really allowed to cook unsupervised because my parents, my mom especially, who was a line cook and had cooked in the Marines, she was slightly germphobic, so she didn't want me getting hair and dirt and gross kid germs in all the food. She was afraid I was gonna cut myself and bleed out because my dad would not be there to perform CPR or whatever. So she just didn't really want me in the kitchen. I could get a bowl of cereal. So I remember just cracking open her cookbooks and reading them for fun and just digging around in the kitchen as a kid, and then taking home ec in middle school and high school a little bit. And then toward the end of high school, I was really strongly considering going into food science as a career, but I went into biology instead and got a associates in forestry at Mount Hood Community College. Also, I would like to shout out Cleveland High School, and you mentioned Nico Bella. She and I were in chemistry class together. She and I go way back.
Oh,
yes. She was my lab partner. I accidentally spilled hot silver nitrate on her hand once. Well, I passed her a test tube, and it burned her, and got this black stain on her hand. But we've been friends ever since. Anyway, so I had this background in science and a love of cooking, and then after I became a mom, after a decade as a field scientist, it's hard out there for a mom. It's hard out there in the male-dominated fields of science, but especially once you have a kid and you're a field scientist, there's really no place for working mothers, and so I have had to go my own way and started writing about food and food history. I took my background in technical writing and an understanding of natural history and my understanding of the food of the region as a Portland native, and I've just been really fortunate and lucky to spin that into a different career.
Well, and so you mentioned home ec classes, which is a great segue to the next question that I had for you, which was a quote in your book on Portland about Lillian Tingle, a Portland home ec teacher and pure food advocate, author, columnist through the 1930s in the Oregonian. So you're following in her footsteps in a big way. One of the things that you write about that she remarked was a young girl that she had as a student who had never really been taught to use her hands.
Right.
And so how do you think kids are being raised today? I mean, you talked about your own experience. What about other kids in general? Do you think that they're getting the food learning that they need to be getting?
I think that it depends on where you are, but I think that there has been a push, especially in urban areas. There's a growing awareness of the problem of food deserts, and I'm just gonna say it bluntly, well-meaning, educated white people are going into these areas and bringing urban agriculture and cooking programs to these schools to help kids kind of learn how to advocate for themselves and their own diets, and turning sort of fallow and untended areas into gardens. And I think that there are more school garden programs now than there were when I was a kid, although it's that harkens back to the 1910s. I mean, in Portland, the first farmers markets, which are now a century old, some of them were run by school children, just as like a fun, like proto 4-H kind of program, and to earn a little bit of cash for their schools. And so I think that the cooking programs have evolved. I think there were times over the last couple of decades where there was less interest in home ec, and I do think that with you know, I don't want to say feminism. There was always like dudes in my home ec classes, but there has been a shifting attitude about what domestic science and home ec looks like. And what I'm really interested in doing and trying really hard to do is to show that home ec was always an act of radical feminism. It was invented by radical feminists to give women a way to cut corners and save time so that they could do shit like go lobby for women's suffrage, or to develop hobbies, or like have a side job so they could earn their own cash. I mean, domestic science and home economics, the economy was time. They were trying to find women ways to save time so that they could be freed up and get away from the stove. And so I just really want women and boys, boys and girls today, to understand that home ec is not a way to chain women to the past. It is a way to strengthen your skills and educate yourself.
I just love that answer. I'm just sitting here, just want you to say more about that.
I'm very passionate about that.
Oh my gosh, I just love that.
Home ec forever.
So speaking of women in food, when you got here, you were talking about a recipe that you were working on, and mentioned that part of what you're doing now is testing recipes for the new joy of cooking, and which means that you're like the modern Irma Rombauer to me.
I am living the dream.
Oh my gosh, it is just wonderful. What's that experience been like?
First of all, I would like to shout out Irma Rombauer. She's a single mother. She self-published Joy of Cooking. Bitch did that shit herself. And no one believed in her, but then somebody did buy the rights. It is a dream come true. The first cookbook that I ever cooked from as a kid was my mother's 1975 Joy of Cooking, which she received as a wedding gift. I have it now in my possession. I have the World War II edition, which has crazy, like, recipes during food rationing during the war are no joke. There's like a beaver tail recipe in there. It is, yeah, it's like very dire. But I've always loved the book. It was just such a happy accident. This gig I've only been doing this like a week and a half. Yeah, it's brand new. It's a dream come true. I was doing recipe development for a couple of local brands before that, and my kitchen is sort of like my own test kitchen because I'm always creating new recipes. So yeah, I feel like, God, I just feel really lucky. I feel very fortunate that I've managed to carve out a little chunk of this good life for myself just by the privilege of being able to afford to stay home is really. I just want to acknowledge that publicly. Like, I am very lucky that I don't have to work full time. I can dick around testing recipe. I tested a 1936 rolled flank steak recipe yesterday. It was crazy.
Well, and there was a recipe on or a dish that you had on your Instagram recently. There was a polenta and grape.
Oh yeah.
Was it a cake?
It was a cake.
Okay.
Yeah. I've been making a lot of cakes lately. I don't know. Just this winter. Every year the winters are harder for me, and I don't take antidepressants. I just kind of put my head down and power through and watch a lot of YouTubes of Lagertha from Vikings in sword fighting scenes, and I just think about the darkness, and I try to really sit in it and lift more weights or whatever, or just try to channel some Viking shit. But this year, baking lots of cakes has helped me and helped my mental health so much. I don't eat all the cakes. I just bake them to smell the smell in my house and to warm up my house with the oven. But yeah, I made this cake. It was kind of a riff on a cake that Martha Stewart made, but it was an olive oil and honey cake with polenta and almond meal in it, and it had some wheat in it too, of course. And then muscat grapes and pine nuts. It's very Mediterranean.
It looked beautiful.
Thank you.
It just looked beautiful. But you mentioned something just now, speaking of depression, and we're talking about food writing, And we recently lost a very influential food writer, Anthony Bourdain, arguably the most broadly influential food-centric personality that we've had, and that he had fans from outside just, the normal home cooks and whatnot. How did Bourdain influence your own writing and thinking about food?
I started watching his show, A Cook's Tour, when it was new. I guess, going on like 15 years ago now. And it was really an eye-opening. At first, it did seem a little stunty and a little bit on the like Andrew Zimmern scale of like, how gross can I, what's the grossest thing I can do and not get fired from this gig? And so a lot of it seemed a little stunty, a little bit of like one-uppy, but he was just kind of hot and skinny and strung out looking, and like that. I was in my 20s. It's like, ooh, who's this silver fox? Like eating still beating Cobra Heart and like drinking fucking like shit that was fermented from like human saliva in a used milk jug or whatever. Like I was like, that dude is like fearless. And then I read his book. And I realized, like, oh, wow, like my mom was a line cook during my childhood, and so, but she worked during the day, and so she worked at the Hobbit, which was a jazz club in Portland, where Harry Connick Jr.
When did she work there?
She worked there, I want to say from like 86 to like 90.
I'm sure she served me a drink or two. I was too young, but my dad snuck me in. That's awesome.
She worked there, yeah. She got to meet Harry Connick Jr. and Mel Brown and, his various quintets and whatever, Leroy Vinegar. So, like, all of the jazz greats in Portland played there, and my mom was the cook there. But she didn't really, like, come home with, like, Coke on her nose or anything. She came home with, like, she would bring home her staff meal, like, as a frozen chicken breast because she wanted to feed us, like, she was bringing home her meal. I had no idea what cooks went through until I read his book. I didn't know how hard. I mean, I knew that she came home with her clothes just fucking destroyed and stinking like fry grease. But I didn't know how bad it is for so many people who work in kitchens. And the thing that really stuck with me that he said is, if you're not like starting in kitchens when you're 16 or 17, like you're already too old. And so even though I did have chances to try to get into the industry as a cook, I always felt like I'm already, like this ship has already sailed, like I'm already aged out. And I joke a lot about how I've aged out of so many things in my early 40s now. But yeah, I always kind of took him seriously when he said that this is hard. If it's hard for a 20-year-old Coke addict, then it's going to be hard for like anybody. I mean, so I just really respected the way he told the stories of people who were behind the scenes and who do all the really shitty, gross work that helps people feel like they're part of something really glamorous. The disparity between the front of the house and the back of the house is real. I think now we're only starting to scratch the surface on finding places that do tip sharing, versus, all these like tip laws, and up for debate nowadays. I posted this on Facebook, and I feel like it's trite. Everybody wanted to weigh in on it, but he was the first cook that I really loved. He wasn't, I grew up watching food TV, but he was the first cook where I was just like, oh my gosh, like, I just really recognized something special about him that stuck with me.
Well, and you mentioned aging out of certain industries, but you've certainly, I think, aged into writing about food, which is just fantastic. So speaking about something that you've written, you wrote a chapter about the Pacific Northwest food scene in the Food Cultures of the World Encyclopedia.
Yeah.
So we have filberts and salmon and elephant ears here, but what do you think makes the Pacific Northwest food culture different from the rest anywhere else in the world?
I would first like to point out that filberts although we do have native hazelnut trees, the filbert as the state nut was actually a concept conceived by the Hazelnut Board in the 1980s. We were not a famous hazelnut. No, this is very much a marketing ploy. I think that what we do here in the Northwest is and I certainly think that other places in the U.S. do this as well, but one thing that I think has very much cemented our culinary identity in the U.S. is an enmeshing of native foodways. So yes, the salmon, oysters were huge 100 years ago, and I think, or 100, they're coming back. So yeah, like coastal foods, wild berries, wild mushrooms were not as important, but still there for sure. And then the other perspective that really informs the way we eat is the fact that people have always just moved here. Like we don't have a strong culture of people who are from here. We have mostly people who are from other places who come here. And so the first white dudes who came here were all from New England. And so there's a lot of that kind of New England-y type of food. I think that the reason why we are still so strangely associated with Southern type food, even though we're not in the South, is because of lumberjack cuisine. You know, a lot of the loggers who came to the Northwest 100 years ago were coming out of Georgia Pacific. They were coming out here for logging jobs and shipbuilding jobs, and they brought their foodways with them. The first blacks of the region brought their foodways from the South. They came here for shipbuilding and steel working. So our food is we're like a micro melting pot. And then, of course, our immigrant foodways, Southeast Asian cuisine for the last 30 or 40 years has had a really big influence. We've been just kind of this little, swirl of watercolors, we don't even have a signature dish here in Portland, Oregon.
Right.
There's not one thing. People have ideas of what it should be, but they're all wrong.
That's a great question. What if we had one? What would you think it would be, or could we even do it?
I have made a case that, actually, the people that I trust the most as Native Oregonians have put it out there that the tater tot is our signature dish. And it was invented in the Northwest. It was invented by Ore-Ida. Ore-Ida is Oregon, Idaho. It's an Oregon creation. And we are, I think, the first region of the world to create the delicacy known as the tacho, which is everything you love about nachos, but with a tater tot substrate.
Now, this is an idea I can really get behind. This is extraordinary, and I think you've just... Have you written about this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was just going to be like...
I write about it.
If you haven't written about that, that's definitely something that needs to become a book. Okay, so while most people's food Instagrams are a snore fest, yours is filled with just beautiful photos of what you work on daily, and it's beautiful. So, what is your Instagram handle?
My Instagram handle is cleverly Heather Arndt Anderson. It's my full name. I don't have anything clever.
And so people can follow you there.
Yeah.
And now you've also brought 3 of your books that you have.
Yeah, I don't have any
you
copies
tonight.
of Breakfast left. But
Is it still available?
it is. It's still available. You can get it on
My
Amazon
favorite
through the publisher, who is Roman and Littlefield. You can get it at the Multnomah County Library. They have a few copies.
Why did you start with Breakfast?
Oh, that just happened to be the first book I tried to. It's a very unromantic story, but the encyclopedia gig, a friend of mine who works in publishing, he's a food history professor at University of the Pacific down in Stockton, Ken Albala. He had followed my blog for a few years and put out the APB that he was looking for authors to write the different sections of this encyclopedia that he was editing. So I pitched to do Pacific Northwest, and he loved it. And so then he mentioned to everybody, not just to me, that the publisher he was working with was doing the Meals series. And so I submitted a proposal and sample chapter to do Breakfast. And so I just auditioned for the gig. It wasn't my idea. And then I pitched Portland after that because they were doing the big city food biographies. And I really had to make a case that Portland should be in the series because they were doing just Chicago, New Orleans, New York, and really big cities. And my proposal and argument was strong enough that Portland should be included, that I was able to get that book into the series.
Wow. That's actually a much more interesting story. I just figured you had the idea and kind of?
No, it's much harder to get published. If you
That's awesome.
nonfiction authors out there or would be like, if you want to get a book published, pitch to academic publishing companies because they will pay you very shitty and they will publish your work. I mean, it's because most people who do these books are professors who have to stay published to keep their jobs, and so there's like no money in it at all. But it's fun if you like to do research and you have the time. I mean, I wrote each of them in like a year. So yeah, they're fun to write if you want to just geek out and go down research rabbit holes and like get lost in Google books from like 200 years ago. It's a really fun job, and they've done okay. They've gotten me gigs like this. If it weren't for my jobs as writing books, I would never get on these fun radio shows.
Well, it's just phenomenal. So what's a secret in the or something interesting in the Portland food biography that would surprise us? Like,
I think that what I would like potential readers to know is that I have snuck a dick joke into each of my 4 books. And I'm not joking. There are 2 in berries, actually, my husband pointed out. Yeah, it's one of my special skills is that I can always sneak a dick joke in under the radar. My publishers and editors never caught them. I'm gonna, my greatest and most ardent wish is to continue writing books and sneaking dick jokes into them.
it's fun. That's like an Easter egg, but it's like an Easter dick. So where can people find your books?
Oh, they're available at Powell's Books, on Amazon, or any of the other book selling websites. I think you can get a better price on like Walmart or Costco. I have copies for sale. You can reach out to me on my website, which is voodooandsauce.com, VOODOOANDSAUCE, and I will ship you a copy signed. Yeah, that's basically, or you can get them at the local library.
Fantastic. Thank you. All right. And that sound means it's time for our second Fast Five of the evening. Are you ready for the Fast Five, Heather?
I was born ready.
All right. So what is your favorite Portland neighborhood?
My favorite Portland neighborhood, it's a close draw between Outer Kearns, which is where I live now, and Sellwood neighborhood, which is hella historic.
Oh, my gosh. I sold a house in Sellwood that actually still had the dentist's plaque who used to live there just right outside the building. It was really fun. So if you're going on a day trip from Portland, where are you likely headed? The coast, Gorge Valley, or Seattle?
Oh, day trips. I do like the coast, I gotta say. Go west.
Which your favorite town on the coast?
I will never ever be too bougie for Hesher ass Seaside. Seaside is Hesher AF, and I fucking love it. Astoria is nice. It's nicer than Seaside for sure. Now that I'm, a mature lady in my 40s, I do tend to like stay in Oceanside, which is kind of a snooze fest, but it's nice. You can just like rent a house for really cheaper than a hotel for sure.
And sometimes you just want to, that's the idea of
I've
going
got
to
a
the coast,
kid. Yeah, I just want him to have his own room. Yeah, I want to get away.
So what's your favorite part of the Portland Rose Festival?
I really like I like the Rosarians, and that there is this enduring culture of old senior citizen rose nerds who like really geek out on the specific varieties of roses. The house I live in now, just up the street, back in the 1910s, my house was built in 1892. It's an old house. And one of the former residents, about a century ago, was a rosarian. And so, yeah, unfortunately, the roses that were on my property had been planted by the previous owner, and they were very gross. They were unscented and very thorny, so I tore them all out and planted thornless blackberries.
I'm all in favor of that. And so now you have fruit, too.
Yeah.
So it's productive. What's your favorite obscure Portland museum?
It's not that obscure, but I do love the Nikkei Legacy Center in Old Town. It's a museum of the history of Japanese Americans in Portland, Oregon, whose history was pretty much, I'm not going to say it was erased, but the government definitely tried their damnedest to erase Japanese people from the state of Oregon during World War II, when they were all rounded up and shipped off to the Minidoka concentration camps. There is a museum dedicated to the history of those people and to the people, who lived here for decades before World War II, and the impact and contributions they made to Portland, Oregon.
Fantastic, and there's still controversy going on today in the area as we're looking to raise building limits, and which will affect the garden in Northwest and whatnot. So, thank you. That's a great answer. How are you planning to celebrate the summer solstice next week?
Well, that's my husband's birthday is June 20th.
Oh,
It's the solstice.
how fortuitous.
Yeah, and my mother's birthday, rest her soul, was the 21st. And so those 2 days have always been laden with shit I have to do. Instead of some like neti pot sniffing, like bleeding by the moon. Maybe I'll go. I haven't had, I have an IUD. I love it. Maybe I'll just rip it out and go bleed by the ocean.
The ocean side.
Yes.
Yeah, on the ocean side. All right. Well, thank you so much, Heather. I'm so glad
Thanks
to
for
meet you.
having
Thank you
me.
for being here. Hey, My Real Portland is brought to you by me, Joseph Lyons, realtor with Cooper Realty. I help home buyers and sellers across the Portland metro area make their real dreams become real estate. Learn more about me at josephlyons.com. All right. Not just yet, Adrienne, because it is time for the game show. Now, normally I would have names in the basket, but we haven't done that tonight. So who would like to be a contestant on tonight's My Real Portland, the game show? Two. You can both be. Two people, come on up. All right. We have Ernest Cooper and Lucy Willard taking the stage.
Hello.
Hi.
So it's neighborhood and street fair time. So let's test to see how well you know the areas of Portland. I have 7 questions about the Portland area, and after I ask each question, you'll buzz in by saying your name to say that you're ready to answer. So let's give it a test. Here's your test question. The name of the lounge we're currently in is called the what?
The Jade Lounge.
All right,
The Jade
Ernest, that is right. So you've just learned how to play the game. All right. Okay, so let's get started. Which street makes the name or gives the name to the TriMet bus line 14?
Southwest 14th.
Lucy.
Lucy.
I was going to say Division, but I'm going to say Hawthorne.
You are going to say Hawthorne, and so you would be right. Lucy on the board with 1 point. All right. Here's your second question. You've heard of Angry Birds. This Portland neighborhood sounds like an empty bird. I thought this was going to be easy when I came up with
Do we have a time limit?
Is there?
No.
Give us a hint.
It's in southwest Portland.
There you go. I never crossed
All
the
right,
river.
so none of you. Okay, so it sounds like an empty bird, Goose Hollow.
Oh,
no.
good.
We're going for
Oh,
Goose
wow.
Hollow. I know, right?
I'm a Lincoln High School teacher, and I didn't get that. That's sinful. Okay.
So I think we should rename Northwest 23rd Avenue to Darcel Boulevard. And we've changed the streets of other names in the city. What did we change Portland Boulevard to?
Ernest, Rosa Parks.
You are right. 1 for each of you, and you should know that being a realtor. You probably showed homes on both Portland and Rosa Parks. So here's your next question. What do you call the area where you will find Cinema 21?
The Alphabet District. Ernest. Sorry.
Ernest, that's
Ernest,
right. I would
the
have
Alphabet
accepted
District.
just about any answer. But that's right, the Alphabet District. Okay, so name the island where you'll find Jansen Beach. Yeah, right?
Ernest. Jansen Island.
No. Lucy?
I can't remember.
It's right on the tip of your tongue.
It is. Oh, I know. Lucy.
Lucy.
Hayden.
Hayden Island is correct. Oh my gosh, you pulled that out. I love it.
I think I got raised from the audience.
So that's 2 points for Lucy and 2 points for Ernest. Here's your next question. You'll find a barber shop at the corner of Capitol Highway and this Southwest Portland Street.
Capital Highway. And
You'll find a barber shop at the
Lucy.
corner.
Barber.
Lucy. Barber is correct. All right.
I was gonna
Silly
say-
question.
I was gonna
get
say
it.
yeah. That's sort of like gender fluid.
Oh my gosh, that's so funny. I could see the bottle immediately that said gender fluid. That was funny. Okay, so here's your last question. Name the two neighborhoods along the Willamette River that share the same name of two different men.
Say it again.
St. John's, Ernest, St. John's and John's Landing.
That's correct.
Well done.
That's correct. So with 3 points, Ernest is the winner.
Good job,
And he
Ernest.
wins a My Real Portland pint glass, although he helped me buy it. So I'm going to give one to my Aunt Lucy.
There you go. Because we have them all over our office.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
I haven't given you one yet. Thank you, everyone. All right. My next guest is a Portland actress that I met while working on my friend Charmian's production of a unique theater work called La Boite. And she's also a realtor with Urban Nest, an acting teacher, an urban farmer, and she's here to talk about her work in the small animal kingdom of bees. Please welcome Adrienne Flagg. So welcome, Adrienne.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you.
so how long have you been working with our small friend, the bees?
Well, we have been working with bees our entire lives, whether we want to or not. They're an intricate part of being an American food eater and a European food eater, actually, because they originally were from Europe. They are not native to the United States.
I had no idea.
We have a lot of native pollinators, but the honeybees that you're thinking of right now that are in the hives with the honey, not native. They were brought over from Europe. Some of the first ones were actually brought over on Columbus's ships.
Wow.
hmm
I had no idea.
There's actually quite a few more varieties in Europe than there are here, but we have bans on importing different animals, and they kind of fall under that ban. So when we headed into this crisis of, the diseases that are happening, this colony collapse syndrome, we were not able to diversify our population of bees because we weren't able to import a larger variety of bees. I think we have 6 or 7 varieties, and there's more, like closer to 30 varieties. So our bees are a little inbred.
Well, and so that's fascinating. Is that colony collapse? That's what this everything that we've been hearing about is referred to then.
Yes, colony collapse syndrome, and there's been a lot of progress on it, and it's really a multi-layered problem. So I've been doing backyard bees now for probably 8 years, I think it is, but I got into it right before the colony collapse was beginning to happen, and there's some really great work happening at universities here in Oregon, actually. There's some really great bee programs here down in Corvallis, and it's a multi-pronged problem. So you can think of it like they don't have the ability to fend off diseases because their immune systems are compromised, and they're compromised by the pesticides, the multiple layers of pesticides that we use in our environment. We also have problems with mites, and because we haven't been able to import more bees to give more diversity to that gene pool to build resistance to the mites, they're really getting clobbered by mites. Here in the Northwest, sometimes we have moisture problems too. But really what it comes down to is compromised immune systems not being able to handle all these different problems that are coming up. But one of the reasons is because they are not genetically diverse.
Wow.
Yeah.
So has there been any movement on the federal level to change that, to make it to respond to that issue?
There are scientists that are putting together the information and really trying to get that information to come forward, but because bees are tied into all sorts of animal husbandry, and those restrictions are pretty clear. I mean, you even know when you go like from the Canadian border to American border or Mexico that there's that stop, and they want to know if you have any produce, and they just don't want to bring anything in, and it's understandable, but it is very tight. And once you open the door, it opens the door for a lot of things, and so it has not been open for bees.
So now you mentioned that you started raising bees right before the syndrome began, or right around then.
Mm-hmm.
What was your spark? What made you say, you know what, I want to start keeping bees? I could see why someone would do it after the syndrome, after hearing of the concern. But what was your start?
Chickens. They're the entry-level drug for all good backyard farming. My vet friends call them yard fish. Chickens are lovely to watch in your yard. They're the only pet that gives you breakfast, and you get seduced into this idea that you can do other things, and so bees are the next logical step. And then goats, and then divorce. So I have not done goats yet.
Have you done goat yoga?
Oh, no, but that sounds like the only kind of yoga I really dig. Like that, yeah.
I'm just curious, you're raising bees in a city. How is raising bees in the city now versus, say, 50 years ago? Do we have this worse problems with pesticides than we did then? What other problems would an urban
pesticides
bee
were
farmer
new.
have?
A lot of the pesticides were coming out after the Vietnam War, and they were chemicals that were being repurposed for pesticide use. And so, that growth of pesticide use has been sort of exponential, and now it's become it's more common than you know. And even if you are growing your own things and planting your own plants, and it's like, you're still often exposing yourself to pesticides. They're at both the big box places like Home Depot and Lowe's have made a commitment to remove the neonicotinoids, which are some of the really bad pesticides that are out there, because they're not just sprayed on the surface of plants, they're in the plants. They're in the seeds, they're in the soil. You can't just wash them off. They become an integral part of those plants. They have made a commitment to phase those out by the end of 2018. So
Oh, wow.
that's good, but if you bought some pretty fuchsias from them this year, they're probably still have the neonicotinoids. And it takes a long time to remove those from the soils that they're using. You can't, you almost have to start over and start from scratch. And so I think that it's just been compounded over the years. It's not like, oh, my neighbor's just using this bad DDT stuff or whatever. It's in everything.
So do you still have your chickens?
Of course, I still have my chickens.
How many do you have?
Legally 3. Illegally 2 more than 3.
Oh, that's funny. And so how many bees do you have?
I have probably about 50,000 bees right about now, which is 2 hives. And they can get down to about 10,000 and up to about 60,000. They expand and contract, so in the winter there's not as many, but right now they're cranking, and I have 2 hives that are super busy. So I had only 1 hive that made it through the winter. The other ones, I don't know what happened. I've stopped trying to worry about what happened. It's like, they're gone, that's what happened. And I had the empty hive out there, and I was going to harvest the honey, and I'm a really good procrastinator. And I went out there, I'm like, yes, tomorrow I will harvest this honey. And the next day I went out, I'm like, somebody has moved into this beehive. So I got a swarm by accident, and they're super vibrant and super busy and did not want me to come near them today. I was supposed to open them up and check on them, and they're like, nope, you're not doing that today.
Huh.
Yeah, so I'm going to follow their lead and be lazy some more.
Sure, why not?
Yeah.
Okay, you don't want your honey gone. So do your bees stay on your property then the whole time, or do you travel them around?
The beehives, the boxes that I have them in, stay on my property, but my bees do not stay on my property. they go wherever they want. It's very hard to fence them in. Very hard. It's not worth the time or money to do that.
Sure.
And also that's their job, is to go out and make the plants have good lovemaking with each other and make beautiful things happen in Portland. So they
And-
go out like 3 to 5 miles.
Wow.
Mhm.
I had no idea how far they would actually go. And then how far can how long can a bee be gone from its hive? Does it?
It has to come in at night because at
Okay.
night the temperatures are dropping and it needs to get home at night. Occasionally one will get stuck outside, but the European honeybees are pretty well programmed to come in at night. And they only live like 6 weeks or so, so they are going through a really interesting cycle. So they'll start out as cleaner bees, and they'll be cleaning out the cells of the baby bees, where the baby bees are born. They clean that out, they clean all the poop up. Actually, there really isn't any poop in hives. It's a super sterile environment, probably because of the cleaner bees. And then they graduate to be guard bees, or they feed the babies, and eventually, usually the last 2 weeks of their lives, they graduate to be able to go fly and to collect nectar and pollen. And they spend that 2 glorious weeks, hopefully not during Rose Festival while it's raining, delightfully doing the epitome of what a bee is supposed to do. And they do it until their wings tatter and they die. And they die usually far away from home, and that is part of the plan, and it's part of what keeps the home clean.
That's just fascinating, and you've just made me sad for the short life of a bee that I was not expecting.
Are you
I get to
crying?
cut off-
He's
I get to cut
tearing
this
up.
out.
He's tearing up at the life of a bee. I understand. I mean, I have such a crush on them. I really do. And the more you learn about them, it's so easy to have a crush. And that's one of the things, is like getting people to have crushes on bees gets people to stop freaking out about bees.
Now, one of the things that you were really adamant about, by the way, when booking the show, was talking about honeybees or worker bees is one thing, but not all black and yellow striped little flying insects are the same.
No.
So, and I love bumblebees, but is there anything that looks like a honeybee that I need to be afraid of?
There is nothing that looks like a honeybee that you need to be afraid of. And I think that there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh my God, I'm allergic to bees. Well, yes, we're all allergic to bees. Like when you get stung, you have an allergic reaction. 3% or less of the population are truly deathly allergic to bees and have an anaphylactic response. So when people are like, I'm allergic, it's like, have you been to be tested? And what kind of bees you've been tested for? Because you can be totally fine with a European honeybee, and you can have a little brown wasp out of California that can lay you flat for 3 weeks, which I've had that happen. And I am actually highly topically sensitive to bees. So I have to work hard to make sure I'm not stung. I don't have an anaphylactic response, but my body goes crazy. So I got stung on the stomach by a little teeny tiny brown hornet in Northern California, and I had a deep purple dinner plate, like hard welt for 6 weeks, solid. It didn't start to fade for 6 weeks. And and so there's all different kinds of responses to it. But ultimately, if you're paying attention and if you're curious, bees have behavior just the way dogs or cats or any other creature that we delight and adapt to. Honeybees, they want to go home. And if you're standing in front of the freeway to their house, that's a problem. So when I have people that come to my backyard, I'm like, just stand to the side. It's like, don't stand in back of a horse. Don't stand in front of the beehive. That's not that hard. The other thing is they're going to protect themselves if they're going to be squashed. A lot of times you'll step on a bee. Well, you're a jerk and you didn't see the bee. You stepped on it and he stung you. It was he's dead now. She's dead now. Chances are it was a she. She's dead. But it's just a matter of paying attention. If you're at a picnic and you're having like hot dogs and hamburgers and there's that little yellow and black bee and everyone's like, oh, bees. That's not a bee. That is a wasp or a yellow jacket or a hornet. Probably a yellow jacket. We have really voracious yellow jackets, especially late summer in Portland, and they're assholes. They're jerks, they're mean, and they're aggressive. They're not just trying to get back home. They're aggressively trying to find protein. That's why they want your hamburger. Honeybees are vegetarian. They just want pollen and nectar. They have no interest and no use for animal protein. Those yellow jackets, though, make use of, rotting meat. That's their jam.
Wow.
And at the end of the summer, I often have a difficult time with yellow jackets attacking my hives because they're trying to go in and rob the babies. Like, they eat them. They eat that larva. And it's a battle at the end of the summer. Like late August through September, I have to really pay attention to what's going on.
How do you do that? I mean, I don't see bees generally. I wouldn't be able to. I just wouldn't.
So if I'm seeing the agitation in my hive and I'm seeing that jerk go in and out, I have to watch and see where the jerk is going and what neighbor hasn't taken care of the yellow jackets in their yard. I mean, that's part of it. Is you have old dead wood or a hole in the ground and you just haven't taken care of it. And I am not for using pesticides, except for yellow jackets. Kill them by any means possible. They're prolific. They will come back. Just be very, very careful of how you use that pesticide and how you get rid of that pesticide.
So speaking of neighbors then, I mean,
Yes.
one of the questions I had is, when you're raising bees, do all of your neighbors support that? Are they on board? Do they even know?
Oh, this is the uncomfortable part of this conversation.
No,
There's rules that are to be followed.
Okay.
And I believe in good education. That's why I'm here.
Sure.
And I believe in good education of your neighbors. Once they have been seduced properly, then it's good to let them know exactly what's going on in your backyard.
Aha.
Yeah, but
That's a
I
great
figure,
answer.
there's so many beekeepers in Portland that have these discreet beehives that you would never know about. It's really those yellow jackets that aren't being taken care of, and those wasps and hornets that are much more aggressive towards people and are often the problem. I mean, they're the problem in my backyard. I have picnics and barbecues in my backyard all the time. 2 beehives, and the only problems I have are with the yellow jackets that are coming from somewhere that hasn't been taken care of.
Sure. And I would assume that, especially in Portland, that people would support the idea of having urban bees, especially as we have lost so much of our urban farmland where we would have had bees. I mean, it's people's backyards now that are going to be taking up a lot of that, and everyone still has fruit trees. And
It's nothing
there's
like a
small
couple pounds
plants.
of honey at the end of the season that makes your neighbors all okay with what's going on. My dad always said, he's like, give them a little bit back of what you took from their yard. I'm like, here you go.
Okay, so here's a question about food that I was going to ask Heather. In honey, I've seen like clover honey and that kind of stuff. When you collect your honey, can you tell where your bees have been? Because if they're going
No.
5 miles out, you're going to get a weird little collection of
But
flavors.
each hive has its own personality and its own things that it digs. So like I've had up to 3 hives in my yard, and harvesting honey from each hive, that honey is a different color, and it's a different flavor. So one bee like finds some fantastic something and comes back and is like, dude, this is so good. And like everybody goes out and gets it, and that becomes unique to that hive. And we are really close to the Peninsula Rose Garden, and that has an influence on our bees, which is really cool. But for years, I had one particular hive that had a super, super citrus flavor. And I don't know why, I didn't know why for a long time, but I've heard that it might be fir buds in the springtime from fir trees that gives it more of this citrus quality. So
And they would be attracted to the fur somehow?
yeah,
Or-
to the little buds there, and they're taking nectar off the tips and bringing it back to the hive. So there's 2 things that they gather. They gather pollen, which is protein particles, and that's the little fluffy stuff in flowers that makes flowers have sex and make more flowers. And they store it in these little hip packets on their sides, these little like hip holsters. The other thing that they'll get is nectar, which is a naturally occurring like sugar water from flowers, and they're bringing that back in their mouths, and then they're passing that on to other bees to store. And that's usually at like 85% water. And there's bees in there. One of the jobs that they have to do at a certain point in their life is to fan the hive, to warm it, and to circulate air to reduce the water in that honey to 18%.
Wow.
And so it takes
Natural dehydrators.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and then that makes it storable, and that's why it doesn't go bad. It has naturally occurring preservatives in it. What is the word I'm thinking of? Hydrogen peroxide in it.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then the moisture level and the sugar level makes sure that they've taken honey out of Egyptian tombs that's thousands of years old, and it's still honey.
My gosh.
Mm-hmm.
So, has there been any positive changes in terms of the colony collapse syndrome, or are we still in a crisis mode?
It depends on who you talk to. I mean, this is kind of the thing with all beekeepers. When you become a beekeeper, the best thing you can do is get a bee mentor or a bee buddy, and they're going to pour all their information into you of the right way to do it. It's not the right way to do it. There's no right way to do it. And I feel like you have to go out and start to collect information from different beekeepers and different schools of thought to figure out your right way. And we are a little bit still there with colony collapse. Like, our numbers commercially have been recouping. One of the problems that we were having, though, like, I know everybody loves almonds, and almond milk is like all the thing right now, but when you have these huge almond groves, it takes a tremendous amount of bees to pollinate those almonds. And the European honeybee is one of the only bees that we have in volume that can do it. We have tons of other pollinators that are out there, but we can't control them the way that we can control honeybees. So we're going down there and basically making them eat almonds all the time. I mean, imagine if that was it.
And without a diverse food
Right.
source
And so that contributed also to the colony collapses. They just didn't have the diverse nutrition to support themselves. So there are some larger beekeepers out there that are getting hip to that and are trying to be better about how they're managing their bees. And there's also really cool small programs of natural queen breeding. So there's in California, in Hawaii, in a couple of other places.
natural queen breeding. Okay, sorry,
Yeah.
that just made me laugh.
So there's these big bee companies that breed queens, and a lot of people buy their queens. I've bought queens from Hawaii. They've never made it a season here because it's crappy compared to Hawaii. Some people have good luck with them. I never have. But now there's some local beekeepers, and they are producing local queens that are more acclimated to where we live. And there's also natural ways, rather than artificially inseminating queens, which that's what they do. Like, when you artificially inseminate a queen, they're getting from like 5 or 6 different bees.
Okay.
And because of the lack of the genetic pool, probably 2 to 3 of those bees are half brothers.
Sure.
So you're not ending up with really healthy bees. If you have a naturally bred queen, some queen who's just born, and she goes up, she goes about 30 feet in the air, and all these dudes are up there, and they have this big sexy party. She's sometimes breeding with like 30 or 40 different bees. And so she's gonna have a much better gene pool. And there's people now that are really encouraging this more natural way of having beehives, and that's helping. It's helping slowly but surely. So that's why I let my bees swarm. I let them do their thing and naturally grow, and I'm trying really hard not to replace them through purchasing bees.
That's fantastic. So aside from the average Portland homeowner pimping their bees out, what if they don't have any? What can the average Portlander do to help take care of the bee population around them?
You can buy plants that are free of neonicotinoids and other pesticides. You can get down on your hands and knees and pull weeds instead of spray them. Or you can let some of those weeds go and have beautiful dandelions, which is one of the bees' favorite foods. It's very nutritious for bees. And then you can harvest those leaves and make a beautiful, nice, bitter salad.
Exactly.
Yeah, so little things like that, and then appreciating them. Sit down and spend some time watching them. You will develop a crush, I promise.
So just being able to watch bees, I've seen people out working with their hives and whatnot. Is there programs where people can just go hang out and watch somebody
You
tend
mean like
bees?
the cat cafe where you
Yeah, exactly. But with bees instead.
Yes. In my backyard, it's $25 an hour. I will make you cocktails. There's a lot of beekeepers in Portland, and I think if you're nervous about bees, ask around and ask to see them. Ask to have a moment with them. It is the easiest fear to get over. I was afraid of bees. My first bees I caught as a swarm. I have never been more terrified. And I'm still nervous. You have to slow down and you have to be present with them. But once you do that, it's a beautiful understanding, and you start to have crushes on strange bees,
Well, and
walking down the street.
That nervousness probably is also in a way a form of respect of the bees as well, and wanting to, just like you said, get to understand them.
And it's it's deep in us. I mean, bees have been used as weaponry throughout the ages. I don't know if you knew that.
No.
Nunneries kept bees, but it wasn't just because they were keeping bees for honey and things like that. It was one of the few ways that nunneries back in the ancient times had of defending themselves. So they would bring their beehives up to the rooftops, and if they were being attacked by hordes of lusty men, they would throw bees on them. And you see in medieval times, like launching these like bee catapults, and you have all these like soldiers out there warring, and the minute the bees come in, it's like terror and running.
Oh my gosh,
Fabulous. It's a real fear.
Idea.
But I'm saying that you can learn their behavior the same way you can learn a cat or a dog's behavior, and understand how to live with them very comfortably.
So if someone does want to get started in their first hive, and how would somebody go about doing that?
So you wait till wintertime when discouraged beekeepers have given up, and they put their gear on Craigslist for cheap first. So you get a sad, failed beekeeper stuff. I got mine out of a divorce. It was not my divorce, her divorce. So, and then you join a club. Like I like the Portland Urban Beekeepers Association, PUB. It's a small, very weird, eclectic group. Like you don't get more nerdier than bee nerds. They call themselves beaks, bee geeks. Yeah, but they have like social events, but they also have really great educational events. And you can maybe meet your bee mentor there. And then in the springtime is when you're going to get your bees. Like by February, your gear should be ready, because you might get a swarm in March. If you want to order your bees, you can order. There's a bunch of places to order. Bridgetown Bees is great. They do a lot of natural breeding. They do some importing, but they're super, super mindful about what they're doing. And so, yeah, you'd get your bees in April or May, March, April, May. I rescued my swarm in March, and there's swarm lists out there you can get on. There's a City of Portland swarm list. Just make sure that your name has like an A at the beginning, because then when people are in a panic that there's bees swarming on their property, they'll call that first person. Yeah.
So, okay, I wasn't going to ask this question because I hadn't thought of it until just now. What if your swarm is somebody else's swarm? Like could somebody, like you just said, you're going to wind up, somebody just arrived.
Sure.
But did it come from someone else, and who owns them?
This is a really good question. So beekeeping is a misnomer. Nobody keeps bees. People have bees. Okay. So you're more of a bee haver. And you can have them for a while, and then you could not have them. And that's just the nature of the game. And once you start to get into bees, you realize that we are not in control of this, and we're going to have to follow. So let's say my bees have swarmed into the neighbor's yard, actually, and the neighbors were very happy to not have those bees in the yard. So I just took them back to my yard, and at the end of the summer, they got some honey. But my friend Greg, he's a couple blocks from me. He had some bees swarm into his yard from another beekeeper. Those are his bees. Like everybody knows, if the bees pick you, they're your bees.
Wow.
Yeah, I got my bees from Portland State. They did not want them.
Wow.
Yeah.
What a lovely arrangement, actually.
Yeah.
I had no idea that everyone was just that open about their sharing That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we do tonight's final Fast Five, how can people follow you? Oh, wait, I had another question before I did that. Before we get to the final Fast Five, tell me, what are you working on in theater?
Oh, I'm part of an improv group called the Knockouts. 5 fabulous seasoned improvisers, and we're starting a third Thursday series at Cider Riot on Southeast Ankeny and 8th. Northeast. No, we're on Ankeny right now. Cooch, thank you. Cooch and 8th. Northeast Cooch and 8th.
Cider Riot is on Cooch and 8th.
Got it.
Thank you.
On 24th and
So,
not far. Down the
I'm
street.
in an improv group called the Knockouts.
Yeah.
Seasoned improvisers. We're going to start a third Thursday regular gig at Cider Riot on Northeast Cooch and 8th. Every month we're going to invite in a favorite musician or band that we like. They'll play a song, we'll do some improv, there's an intermission, and then we give it over to the musicians for the rest of the night. And there's delicious cider at Cider Riot.
That sounds
Super
so
good.
awesome.
Yeah.
So how can people follow you and find out more about Bees, your improv group, your buying or selling real estate?
Yeah, the improv group is the Knockouts. That you can find them on Facebook, and my Instagram is, I think it's Chicken Knickers. You know what chicken knickers are?
No.
Chicken knickers are the fluffy butt side of the chicken. Like, they have all the beautiful feathers, but on the underside of their butt, it's like this fluffy, beautiful, and those are chicken knickers. That's how you can find me on Instagram.
Oh, that's so cute. I love it. Fantastic. Well, let's hope everyone follows you there. All right, so tonight's final Fast Five. All right, that sound means it's the time for tonight's final Fast Five. Adrienne, here are tonight's final Fast Five questions.
Okay.
What's your favorite Portland neighborhood?
I live in Piedmont. I love Piedmont. I went to school at Jefferson High School when it was a performing arts high school, left for New York, and when I moved back to Portland, I knew exactly where I wanted to live. I love all of North Portland, but Piedmont is special to me.
That's fantastic. And how lovely to have the space right where you grew up, just being right there. That's great. You're going on a day trip.
Mm-hmm.
Where are you likely headed? The coast, Gorge Valley, or Seattle?
I'm going straight to Lost Lake, so I'm going to go up to Hood River, and I'm going to hook a right and go 30 minutes up the mountain to the most gorgeous lake. It's one of those mountain lakes where the mountain just busts right out of it.
You were there there recently with your mom, yeah?
I did. I brought my 92-year-old mom.
Fantastic.
It's like she was a trooper because you're in a mountain and there's trails to get down to the lake. But she did it, and it was gorgeous. The whole time she was complaining. She was like, oh, my God. Oh, my, do we have to go back the same way? Oh, my God. And then we get to this amazing view. I'm like, but, Mom, this is why we're here. She's like, I've seen it. It's great.
What's your favorite part of Portland's Rose Festival?
How empty it is at the beach.
Right?
Right? That is like the time to go to the coast. Nobody's out. There's like good deals.
Especially
Nobody's
all
out
the
there.
kids are watching the parade.
That's
or
right.
in the parade.
And you can bring your dogs to the coast, and nobody, is worried about your dogs mowing down their kids and their stupid sandcastles. Their lovely sandcastles.
What's your favorite obscure Portland museum?
It's not a museum, but to me it is, and that's the Japanese
Sure.
garden. We have some amazing gardens here, like the rhododendron gardens and Chinese gardens, and those really are museums. They're cultural and historical, juicy, yummy places to be in Portland. They just happen to be mostly outside.
Right.
And they have great events there. They've just done a huge remodel. So now I can bring my 92-year-old mom up there, and she won't be like, oh, my God, it's still going uphill. I love the Japanese garden.
Well, and one of our most photographed spots with people not even understanding that it's in Portland. The Japanese maples there are so photographed, and yet, so, how are you planning on celebrating the summer solstice next week?
I'm going to get naked and put pearls on and dance around with bare feet in the mud. That's not what I'm doing at all. I don't know. I never think about it, but I have to say, like the summer solstice, and I often find myself on a place we call Secret Beach. It's a secret and it's a beach. It's down on Swan Island. It probably has another name like Superfund Central or something like that. It's this beach. I think they were forced to build it as a penalty because of the Superfund site, but it's actually upriver of the Superfund site. So if you go down to McDonald's and hook a left, it's next to the Daimler Chrysler big building down. Why am I telling everybody about this? Such a great beach. It's just this little arc of beach, and you have this cool view of the Fremont Bridge and the sunset, and you can build a bonfire there, and it's great. That's what we do usually at the beginning of the summer and at the end of the summer as we go down to Secret Beach. I mean, we're there a lot of other times, but we only do the bonfire. It must be some quiet pagan gene bursting forward, some hippie Oregon thing that I wasn't able to get rid of in New York.
Well, that just sounds fantastic. What a beautiful way to spend the
It's gorgeous there. I love it
a long
there.
day, yeah.
I love it there.
And we'll tell no one about the secret.
Nobody should know.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much,
Yeah,
Adrienne.
thank you.
All right, one more time for Adrienne Flagg, and let's hear it for all of my guests. Adrienne Flagg, Caitlin Weierhauser, and Heather Anderson. Thank you to the Jade Lounge. You've been such a great audience. Thank you for sticking out. And our next show will be live here at Portland's Jade Lounge at 23rd and Ankeny on July 10th at 7 p.m. Happy hour is at 6:30, so get here early. And good night.
It's always been home, I've always been here, I've always got time for one more beer. So pick up a beer and pull up a chair and strike up the band. It's My Real Portland.